Yo, what's poppin', everybody? If you're seeing this video, welcome to the second channel. It's a pleasure to have you here. I really enjoy your company. But on this second channel, I'll be posting mostly strategy-based content, maybe switch it up, this is gonna be where I'm gonna maybe put all my extra stuff, Milano Part 2. So yeah, today I'm gonna show you guys how to use small bits of knowledge to your advantage, because there's only a certain extent to understanding the level of your deck and understanding what your deck's capable of, that it can only bring you so far. There's points where the technical play just is what changes the game. So I'm going to show you guys just a few demos today, just to help you understand what really I'm trying to show you. So my first example is going to be with Pot of Prosperity. The first thing your opponent, they have 5 unknowns, 1, 2, 3, or 4 unknowns, and the first card they play is Pot of Prosperity, and you let it resolve. Usually, if Pot of Prosperity is the first card they're activating, you can't really guarantee whether they have a good hand or a bad hand, because this just is the best ash bait. You know what I'm saying? So what I want to show you guys is what these hits mean. So I'm gonna banish 6, and I'm gonna hit these cards, and I'm gonna explain to you what hitting these cards means. So over here, these are just you don't need to know what all these cards do. You just need to understand the roles. So we have a starter, an extender, we have a blowout card that's part of the engine that's normally not played. We have certain hand traps that are good knowledge to know that your opponent's playing, and a card like Sanctum, where this is like a wild card where it's usually not in most decks, but them picking it or them not picking it, you can build assumptions based on the rest of their hand. Because it's very important to even if you don't have hand traps to stop the rest of these cards, you should kind of understand what they could have for their follow-up turn, so you know what you should be prepared against. So if I pick a starter, that's the easiest assumption you can make. The rest of my 4 cards are not starters. Maybe I have an extender, maybe I have hand traps, maybe I have defensive cards, but I do not have a starter. So maybe stopping this would be beneficial in case a certain extender, unlike like World Legacy Guard Dragon in this case. But if I do not have the World Legacy Guard Dragon, then you know that this starter is valuable to me. That's why I picked it. World Legacy Guard Dragon showing, if I pick the extender, then you understand that my hand already contains a starter. And this is one of the most blowout extenders in the Dragon Maid deck. So you should understand that one of these cards is a starter, and then the other 3 are pretty much unknowns. What Sloth tells you, even though not a lot of decks play Sloth, what Sloth tells you is that, for example, in a deck like Dragon Maids, where usually you're passing on a Hieratic Seal, maybe with a Shio, you should be aware that entering the battle phase against a seal, this card could potentially come out. That's the information you could build just by seeing this Amorphage Sloth. If you see a Dark Magician, you know that there's a Dragoon in there. You should watch out for Dragoon in the follow-up turn if they don't bring it out on the first turn. If you see a Verte, you know that's what they're going for. Now, let's say these cards over here, Droll, Nibiru, Sanctum. So when you see Droll, and I don't pick it, you immediately must assume that one of my defensive cards could be Droll. It's not always going to be Droll, but you should know that. So maybe you should use, if you see me hitting a Droll, the best possible play you could do is maybe starting with your most powerful searcher before you actually, or if you have a Prosperity, you shouldn't be adding a search card off of it, just to play around the Droll. If you have to get a search card, then of course, you have no other choice. But in situations like these, where I don't choose the Droll, maybe you want to start off with your Nadir Servant, maybe you want to start off with your Prosperity, just to kind of test the waters and see what you're up against. So Nibiru is obvious, you know what I'm saying? Keep that in mind. After you hit number 5, there is a Nibiru in the main deck, so these defensive cards could be Nibiru as well. Make sure to keep your eye out for that. And Artifact Sanctum. So if they don't choose Artifact Sanctum, immediately you could assume that one of their cards in their hand could be a Scythe. Unless they choose the starter, you can't really make that assumption, because obviously you choose the starter over the blowout defensive card. But if they choose the one of the defensive cards over the Sanctum, then you should know that either they have Scythe in their hand, or they should have Scythe or Sanctum, or both. But you know what I'm saying? For the rarities example, we're gonna use one card. So these are just some basic assumptions you can build based off of what kind of cards your opponent hits off the Pot of Prosperity. And it's important to build these assumptions just to know what is potentially coming in the follow-up turn, or what defensive cards you have to avoid, what cards you have to play around, and etc. Pot of Prosperity, as much of a powerful card it is, I do understand the fairness of it, in which you kind of reveal your deck. If you see against Guru, for example, you always don't ash this, because like usually you're holding it for the Red Eyes fusion, but also you get a good idea of what kind of traps they're playing. Whether they're playing Summon Limit, there can only be one, whether they're playing Ice Dragons, all kind of stuff like that. Pot of Prosperity will give you that knowledge, and that will give you the knowledge to kind of make reads based on what your opponent has, just off of their prosperity, and you didn't even interact with them yet. You can already make reads on how many cards they have. Like if I pick Chamber, as soon as someone picks Chamber in this situation, which is the starter, immediately I'm gonna think Extender, potential defensive card, random card, and like let's say like another like type of engine card, like something along those lines. As long as you understand that basic premise, you should be able to make basic reads, and the more you try to implement this in your gameplay, the more you'll kind of understand it better. And that's going to be the end of this demo. I'm going to show you guys another one real quick. In certain formats, the number of cards that is in your opponent's deck could reveal, or at least narrow down, what deck they could be playing. So like let's say like 3 months ago, if there's someone playing 60 cards, immediately I'm going to think Dragon Link, or it's going to be the Eldritch, Dogmatica, Shadal type of variants where, it's just a mix and match. So like even going first, that's important, because I kind of know what to prepare against. For example, in Dragon Maids, if I know I'm playing against Dragon Link, I'm going to do my best to set up a Seal Tidying and kind of get a little greedy with it. Try to set up as many impactful interruptions rather than making my safe play that'll usually work against control decks. In 2015, where Monarchs were like the meta, the number one thing that everyone would ask as soon as this duel would start is how many cards are in your extra deck. Because immediately, if you know that your opponent's playing Monarchs, you could like change up your gameplay based on like obviously the deck they're playing, because no other deck in the format is playing 0 cards in their extra deck. So this is just another example of reads you can make based on your opponent's deck, based on your opponent's deck choices, just by the simple public knowledge that's already given to you. In this format, we're kind of like in a format where there's not too many decks over 40, over 45. But like if it is like a 60 card deck that you're playing against, usually that's the most identifiable. Usually you just kind of have to guess that it's a Dragon Link deck. The only 60 card deck I've been seeing is like the Orcus Eldritch deck, but you can't really make reads based on that deck just because it's not popular enough to make reads on. So this is information that you're going to use in future formats where maybe Grass comes back, and then there's a 60 card deck back in the format, and you can just immediately assume that every 60 card deck is going to be Grass. So you got to keep your eye out for that card. You know what I'm saying? Guys, the last thing I want to talk about is card rarities. As little as this will come up, you have to try to take every single advantage you can in order to benefit your own technical plays. So in this case, let's say you see a Cosmic Cyclone that's common game 1, and then you see an Alti game 2. Immediately you can assume obviously those are 2 different Cosmics. They're not the same Cosmic Cyclone. Think of it as like they're their own different cards. So like maybe in Cosmic Cyclone's scenario, it won't really impact the play around too much. But for example, a card like where a deck like Eldritch, where if you see a Secret Lord and a Gold Lord, immediately, you know what I'm saying, you know that there's gonna be multiple lords. Or if you see 2 secrets in the next game, you see a gold, you're gonna know it's 3 lords. The reason why that's important is like, let's say you're playing against a Zodiac Eldritch deck, where Ice Dragon's Prison is usually gonna be like the double lord banishing card, and it's gonna like be very impactful. If you do see the different rarity as well as like the third copy, you know that they're gonna be playing 3 lords rather than just 2. These are small things you could take, these are small optimizations that you can make, but these are the type of plays that kind of could win you the game one time. You know what I'm saying? It could. Because if your opponent is playing the Eldritch deck, then, you know what I'm saying? If you know they play 3 lords, then you know that your Ice Dragon's Prison won't be the turn-ending card. Chris, why you crying? Why you crying, Pizzo? So if you know that your opponent is playing 3 lords, you should expect that their conch or their Hakueros could still be live after you resolve your Ice Dragon's Prison, rather than if you're, you know what I'm saying, you see only 2 or 1 of each rarity, so you know there's 2 only, you know what I'm saying? Even in this scenario, even though it doesn't come up too much, there's still there is a assumption you can make based off this knowledge. There are assumptions, and you should be making every assumption you possibly can in order to benefit your own gameplay as much as you can. Alright, let's say we start the duel, I draw my 5, look at my hand, and then either set cards or just don't play any monsters, and I pass. The first assumption you build is immediately, my opponent could have Cyframe Gamma. I remember Jesse was telling us, it was sometime at Game Nation where he's like, there's literally no point, unless you're playing like a flip monster deck, there's literally no point in playing a monster face down, because that shows your opponent that you have no play, that your hand is poo-poo. You know what I'm saying? It's better to just hold your cards and just hope for the follow-up and make your opponent assume that the rest of the cards in your hand are defensive cards in order to play off of their choke, because sometimes that's just your best play. Playing off your opponent's choke has brought me like lots of wonders. I remember one time specifically where I pretty much counted summons, like I was like, wait 1 second, you know, I did the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm like, all right, you're good to go. And so my opponent assumed that I had Nibiru, and he passed on his barricade board blocker. He didn't want to resolve his wand, because if he summoned Nightmare, drop the Nib, he passes his turn. Which still is like, he should have made that play, but I kind of got into his head. Where that was a situation where I kind of influenced him into thinking the rest of my hand is defensive cards. Meanwhile, I completely bricked. And I remember I ended up actually winning that game because I ended up top decking like a Oviraptor or something. It was when I was playing Dinos. Easy win. But yeah, that's how that works. You know what I'm saying? How to understand your opponent's cards just by the way they perform them. All right, guys. So the last thing I want to talk about is, in the beginning of your game, the first thing you should be doing is thinking, all right, what are the most popular hand traps? Ash. Okay, for this format, it's gonna be Ash, Nibiru, but otherwise, lots of people are choosing to play cards like Dark Ruler no more in their main deck. Droplets. So these are all cards that you should be understanding are very much possibilities in your opponent's hand. So these are cards you should be playing around and trying to take as much advantage of just by knowing these are popular cards, instead of just, you know what I'm saying, letting it like, oh wow, my hand's amazing. Activate Desires, they Ash it, and it's like, oh wow, why didn't I normal summon my bait card instead? Because that's a very popular card, this format, you know? But yeah, that's gonna kind of be it. I'm gonna edit this video, see how it turns out, and if you guys like it, let me know. I 100%, this is something I'm doing for fun, and you know what I'm saying, hopefully educate you guys, maybe help you guys out. So if you guys do like it, please let me know, leave a comment, and make sure to subscribe to the second channel, because ideally that's where this is going. And yeah, so peace out, guys, have a good one.